It looks like Sega is continuing to branch off into big screen adaptations when it comes to its video game IPs. This time around, we're getting a big screen adaptation of the hit game The House of the Dead. I remember in the mid-90s growing up in the arcades, playing this game on the big arcade machines where you had the physical gun, you had to shoot it at the screen at the zombies. It was an on-the-rail shooter, so it kind of statically moved around the map and you had to shoot zombies coming at the screen. To reload, you had to kind of flick the gun off the screen. I remember as a kid, I spent so much damn money. But the breakdown for this video, guys, to start off with, we're going to take a 1-minute look at a House of the Re-Dead trailer, which is going to give you a good insight and sample as to what this game franchise is all about. So we'll take a look at that 1-minute clip from the House of the Dead remake. Then after, we'll jump into this Deadline article and break down all the details and take a look at some concept art of the big screen adaptation that's coming up of House of the Dead. So plenty of goodies to get to in this video, guys. So let's start off with that 1-minute trailer. Let's jump into it and let's kind of see what House of the Dead is all about.
Please, help! Everyone's getting killed!
Nobody lives here alive.
Of the dead. I shall destroy everything.
So I hope that 1-minute trailer there gave you a better kind of understanding and sample size about just what this kind of franchise is about. These kind of crazy, demonic, kind of zombie, mutated creatures coming after you and you're trying to survive, and it's just all kinds of craziness, bonkers, action-packed, and making a movie out of this, I think, is a great way to go, and I think a lot of people will be very, very happy that this is being turned into a movie. But let's jump into this article, let's break down these details and see what we can learn about this movie. So, Paul W.S. Anderson and Jeremy Bolt plot Sega's The House of the Dead movie exclusive concept art. So yeah, we do have exclusive concept art here for this upcoming live action movie. So, as you can see here, the first image that we have for concept art, this kind of hulking behemoth here. As you can see, he's got this like monster face, these big kind of teeth, gnashing blood, sores all over his body. Looks like he's in a slaughterhouse. He's got this big chainsaw here. You definitely wouldn't want this guy chasing after you. Chainsaw Massacre vibes there for sure. But that's just kind of a sample there of kind of one of the creatures that could be in the movie. So let's go down. Exclusive, Paul W.S. Anderson will write and direct House of the Dead, an action-packed feature based on the legacy Sega franchise. Anderson will produce alongside his partner Jeremy Bolt. Sega's Toru Nakahara will produce along with Story Kitchen's Dimitri M. Johnson, Mike Goldberg, and Dan Jevons. Timothy I. Stevenson will be the executive producer. I don't know of any of those producers or casting crew there, guys. If you know of any of them, that's great. Just thought I'd read that off for you. So, Anderson and Bolt have brought several game franchises to the screen successfully, including Mortal Kombat. The Mortal Kombat movie, the latest one that they did on HBO Max, I thought it was incredible. It was such a great movie. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, we got the sequel for Mortal Kombat coming up. The Resident Evil franchise. Say what you want about those Resident Evil movies with Mila Jovovich or whatever her name is. I actually got some really good enjoyment out of those. Those movies were cheesy. They weren't always that good, to be honest. They were quite bad, some of them. But I found them enjoyable. I really did kind of like them. And, you know, I'm overdue to actually go back and revisit those movies. And most recently, Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter was a massive flop. It was a dud. Pretty much no one liked it. It was universally panned. Monster Hunter, though, is such a popular game franchise, and they did it really dirty, and it's a shame. The House of the Dead debuted in 1996. 1996. Wow, that takes me back. I remember being in the arcade, putting my pound coins into the thing, shooting loads of zombies, getting killed, getting upset, having a good cry, asking my parents for more money, and I would sit there all day long just putting my pocket money into this machine, trying to play House of the Dead. I remember that. So it was an on-rail shooter For those of you who may not know, an on-rail shooter is a pretty much non-existent term in video games these days. An on-rail shooter, so you have a static camera, and you'll shoot a load of zombies coming at you, and then the camera will move to another location, and then the zombies will come at you, and then the camera will move again. You have no control over where your character goes. It's just a camera that kind of moves from location to location, and as it moves each time, more and more kind of zombies come at you, or demons, or whatever you want to call them. So, fast-paced action horror with groundbreaking zombie premise. That included the innovation of giving its undead villains the ability to run, something that inspired films from Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead remake, and Mark Foster directed World War Z. It was the House of the Dead that first evolved the flesh eaters from the lumbering stumblers that George Romero brought to life in his movies. And this brings us to our second piece of concept art for this upcoming movie. And I think this looks kind of fantastic, it looks creepy as hell. I'm not sure if this is just a trick of the camera, but it looks like these two kind of zombies here are kind of melded at the shoulder. Like, it looks like they're kind of one zombie, but like two parts kind of fixed together. Unless this zombie is actually behind this one here, but it's just a trick of the camera. Yeah, they could be conjoined. I'm not really sure. It looks like they are, but as I say, it may be a trick of the light or the camera. But yeah, I think these zombies look terrifying. They look great. Imagine seeing this coming at the screen. These guys kind of running at you, charging at you in a live action movie. Terrifying as hell. I think it would look great. And I hope they keep it practical rather than CGI if they do this kind of thing in the movie. So, in the arcade game, players take on the role of an AMS agent, a government agency tasked with thwarting the conspiracy of organizations that threaten the world. The title comes from the bureau they work for because their life expectancies are brief. So, quote, "I loved the video game since the 90s, Anderson told Deadline. Back then, I was a big player of video games in arcades. I was absolutely the same. Back then, there was no really like, there was no Game Pass. Video games were expensive. There was no really like gaming computers weren't really a thing back in the mid-90s. Like, video games hadn't evolved that much onto PC and stuff like that. And to buy a console was mega expensive. So quite often, parents would take their kids to arcades where you could play these kind of games that you couldn't access on like consoles because they were too expensive. Which is now how I happened upon Mortal Kombat, and pretty much at the same time I was also playing a lot of House of the Dead. It's a title I've always loved, the IP has grown in strength, and now it's really cross-generational. I was one of the original players, but now I have teenage kids who also play. That is the real attraction for me, that you've got a cross-generational piece of IP. We're going to base the movie on House of the Dead 3, and if you know the mythology, that is about a family conflict, amidst the action and scares. It's about a woman, Lisa Rogan, who's attempting to rescue her father, and it's also about Daniel Curian, who's the son of a man who caused the mutant outbreak in the first place, and who has to deal with the sins of the father. So that's some really interesting information there coming from the director behind this movie, that they're actually focusing this movie around House of the Dead 3. To be honest, it's been so long since I've played any of these games. I don't even remotely remember any of the story from any of these games. I just remember shooting zombies at the arcade on the big screen. I don't remember any of the plot details, so do forgive me on that. So it goes on to say, my approach will be to reflect this hyper-immersive kinetic video game, which is why Zack Snyder took these creatures and made them fast-moving. Anderson said, "This is a full-on terror ride. It's different than what we did with Resident Evil, where there will be lots of where there were lots of traps and puzzles and things to be figured out." That was in Resident Evil he was talking about. House of the Dead is at heart a light rail shooter game, so it drags you straight into the middle of the action. I'm going to make a movie that mirrors that approach and plays out in real time, dragging the audience straight into the action. That sounds fantastic. There's nothing worse than when you're going to see a popcorn action movie and it takes so long to get into the action. It's like a slow burn. I love it when it just jumps straight. It just kind of if I can talk, it just kind of plops you into the sharp end, the deep end of things, and I kind of like that kind of avenue to filmmaking. It's not going to be kind of lumbered with a whole bunch of backstory that might exclude people who know nothing about House of the Dead. Exactly. If you're coming at this movie, if you're doing this movie based on House of the Dead 3, you then have to expect that people who are watching this movie have never played the games, they don't know anything about the lore, the IP, so you have to make this movie with the approach that people have never seen it, but also that it has some Easter eggs in it that can be a callback and fan service to those people who do remember playing it like myself. Everyone's going to be on the same page. Everyone's going to get sucked straight into the action and learn about the characters and the plot, as they have 90 minutes to basically escape the most extreme haunted house you've ever been in. That sounds really, really fun. So we know that it's 90 movies. 90 movies. We know 90 movies. So we have two vital pieces of information there. It's going to be focused on House of the Dead 3. It's going to be 90 minutes long, and it's going to jump straight into the action straight away, which is great. So that's three pieces of vital information there that are quite important to learn about this. And this brings us to our next piece of concept art as well. We have this big demonic figure here with these massive sharp claws. This is very much reminiscent of some of the characters and the demons that you see in like the Doom games. That's what it reminds me of. But it's kind of a devil character. He's got these giant horns. It looks like he's got pieces of metal armor kind of infused into his body. Gigantic claws. I'm not sure if these are like augmented, like he's added these, or if these are like part of his biology. But either way, we see this kind of lab that's behind him, and maybe it's been experimented on, or something like that. But yeah, it's pretty terrifying to see this, and seeing that in live action would be pretty badass. So the haunted house is an abandoned research facility where these creatures were hatched. Before, as Anderson quipped, the inmates took over the asylum. The filmmakers say these inmates are way more capable killers than zombies. The original director of the video game, Takashi Oda, was very specific and never referred to them as zombies, Bolt said. He called them creatures. Resident Evil, for example, was very clearly based upon Romero's zombie movies. House of the Dead is something different. These are more like weaponized mutations. So, it's very different from being a zombie movie. They're like weaponized mutations. So, it looks like we have these kind of mutant-human hybrids that are kind of like weapons, biological weapons at the same time, as we can see from this kind of concept art here with these gigantic claws and stuff. So, that's a pretty cool idea. These incredible steroid-upped figures that have chainsaws embedded into their limbs. Chainsaws embedded into their limbs. It also has a very Japanese design aesthetic related to manga and films like Tetsuo, the Iron Man, where you kind of have bits of metal and technology embedded into human mutated flesh. Yeah, so like I was saying in this concept art, we've got bits of metal that are kind of infused into the flesh, so it's kind of a bit crazy in that respect. And these creatures are keenly intelligent, another thing that set the House of the Dead apart. They're not just going to come at you slowly, lumbering. They're coming from the sides. They're coming from the back. They're trying to trick you. They're trying to trap you. And the level of intelligence differs. And they're all being driven on ultimately by Dr. Kurian, whose life force and intelligence lives on, almost like AI. The flesh is dead, but the mind lives on in a character called the Wheel of Fate. And he likes all the great villains from the House of the Dead and creatures. They're all named after tarot cards. So the Wheel of Fate, Death, and the Magician. Sega's Toru Nakuhara is Japan's based game maker, head of production, movies and TV. He was a Hollywood lawyer brought in by Sega to be the gatekeeper of his properties back when many game to film transfers were not very good. Sega helped turn that around with Sonic the Hedgehog film franchise. I love the Sonic franchise. It's so damn good. Cannot wait to see Sonic 3 when it comes out this year in December. And they have numerous other percolating. They have other numerous percolating. The company has been protective of the House of the Dead, and this is the next step for them. Sega was a little skeptical about getting involved in big Hollywood productions. The idea that they're sharks, they're going to rip us off, Nakahara said. But I convinced them, and working with Paramount on Sonic changed the dynamic towards our transmedia policies. So it was basically their massive success with the Sonic franchise that has got Sega to get more interested and invested in making big screen adaptations of their video games, which is great to see. And since then, we've been actively developing a lot of productions, looking at it as an initiative to expand the whole Sega brand. I got to know Paul and Jeremy, they're legends in terms of zombie movies, and Dimitri at Story Kitchen. They have a rare understanding of video games and how to bring them to the screen. We want to add a cool zombie movie to the Sega Transmedia basket. They will pitch the project immediately with plans to be in production by mid to late 2025. Anderson is repped by Ken Camus at Key Creatives and Alexander Lear at Wigan, Bolt by Alexander Lear at Wigan LLP, and Story Kitchen by WME and Prior Cashman. Tora Nakaharu negotiated on behalf of Sega. And that brings us to our last kind of concept art here as well. Another big behemoth guy. And it looks like he's got a club, like a pole here with a club. And the club's made out of skulls. That's pretty damn cool. He's got these gigantic teeth. He's got all these thorns sticking out of his head. And it looks like he's got chains kind of infused around his body here. And yeah, wow. So this concept art for this movie looks badass. And the fact that kind of they were encouraged by their success with Sonic to go on and do more Sega live action adaptations of their games is great. But I'm really excited to see what they do with this. I think it could be horrifying. It could be great. It has to be R-rated, surely. To do a movie like this, to have mutant flesh with chainsaws embedded in it and all this kind of craziness, it has to be R-rated. There's no way you could do a PG-13 version of this and make it work. So I'm really excited to see what they do with the horror aspect. The atmosphere has to be creepy and all that kind of stuff. But guys, I throw it off to you. What do you think about this? Are you interested in a House of the Dead live action adaptation being brought to the big screen by Sega? Is it something you played like me as a kid? Let me know what you think about it, guys. Jump down into the comment section, leave your thoughts, comments, and opinions. Can't wait to hear what you have to say. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe before you leave, and I will see you, as always, in the next one.